I don't know, this is something that I actually have to step back and kind of like try to find a solution because I'm so tired.
Aryna Sabalenka has spent the last 2 weeks defending a Nike kit that large parts of her own fan base called one of the weakest designs of the season, an orange top with a black mesh overlay that drew immediate and sustained criticism. Comment sections filled with fans openly wishing another brand would step in. In roughly the same 48-hour window, Nike quietly pushed a different athlete to the front of its 2026 US Open campaign. Not the world number one, not the player who had dominated the early hard-court season. A 21-year-old from Quezon City ranked inside the top 20, Alex Eala. The contrast was sharp enough that it did not go unnoticed. Alex Eala has been a Nike athlete since 2019. That is not a short-term marketing experiment. That is a 7-year relationship the brand has maintained since she was 14 years old. Sabalenka, by comparison, waited a long time after reaching the top of the rankings before receiving a fully custom kit. That difference in timeline is part of the background noise now surrounding both players' US Open presentations. On August 6th, Nike unveiled the 2026 NikeCourt Slam dress in Old Royal Blue with basketball-inspired black and white mesh detailing, priced at $140 and available on Nike.com. The face most prominently attached to the launch imagery was Eala's. The dress appeared days after Sabalenka's own US Open kit had already drawn heavy online criticism. Side-by-side comparisons spread quickly. One release was praised for its clean look and color. The other was widely mocked. Tennis social media did what it always does with visual contrast. It amplified the gap. Sabalenka addressed the broader issue of creative control in press, expressing frustration that other athletes appeared to receive more distinctive treatment. The quotes circulated widely. In the same period, Eala appeared in Nike's channels wearing the old royal dress and later teased a second look in mint green on her own Instagram. 2 coordinated visual moments for one athlete. Very little visible coordination of the same intensity for the world number one in that specific launch window. It is important to keep the facts straight. The Court Slam dress is not a fully custom one-off design created exclusively for Eala. Other Nike-sponsored players will wear versions of the same silhouette in different colorways at Flushing Meadows. What Nike did choose was the face that would sell the global campaign imagery for that silhouette. In a brand as deliberate as Nike, that choice is rarely accidental. It reflects an internal reading of which athlete currently converts attention, engagement, and ultimately product interest across key markets. That reading appears to line up with signals that have been building for some time. At Wimbledon in 2025, Eala walked onto court with a Sampaguita hair tie, a small but deliberate heritage piece referencing the Philippine national flower. Nike had created it specifically for her. While Sabalenka has been publicly discussing the desire for greater creative input on her kits, Eala has already been receiving culturally specific accessories. Those are different levels of investment and different kinds of relationship. Wider coverage has followed a similar direction. In March, Forbes published a feature examining why Alexandra Eala could become one of tennis's next global crossover figures. The piece did not treat her as a novelty ranking climber. It treated her as a market signal. When a publication that tracks business and cultural impact uses language like trailblazer for a player still outside the top 15, it is usually responding to data beyond match results. Audience size, engagement rates, geographic reach, and long-term commercial potential. Tony Nadal's public support has added another layer. After Eala's title in Washington, the Hall of Fame coach and longtime architect of Rafael Nadal's career congratulated her in language that went beyond polite acknowledgement of a good week. The Nadal Academy has been part of Eala's development path for years. When someone with that history speaks of her trajectory with clear conviction, the tennis world tends to listen. None of this erases Sabalenka's achievements. She is the world number one for a reason. She has won major titles, carried the tour's highest ranking, and produced some of the most dominant stretches of recent seasons. Her frustration about creative control is understandable on a human level. Athletes at the very top often expect the visual presentation to match the on-court hierarchy. When it does not, the gap feels personal. But marketing departments do not operate purely on hierarchy. They operate on reach, conversion, and future growth. Southeast Asia has historically been underactivated by major tennis brands relative to its population size and digital engagement. Eala's audiences in the Philippines and across the diaspora generate consistent high engagement. When she plays, viewership and social conversation spike in time zones that traditional tennis marketing has not always prioritized. Nike appears to have looked at those numbers and adjusted its US Open campaign emphasis accordingly. The next visible test arrives at Flushing Meadows. Both players will walk onto the grounds in kits that now carry different narrative weight. One is the reigning #1, still navigating public dissatisfaction with her current design. The other is the rising player whose face was chosen to sell the brand's primary slam silhouette. Crowds, cameras, and secondary conversation will render their own verdict in real time. After New York comes the Asian swing, Beijing, Wuhan, and the events where the market Nike is betting on will be watching most closely. It is worth pausing on the human element. On August 15th in Cincinnati, Eala lost to Amanda Anisimova in 3 sets, ending a strong run of results against higher-ranked opposition. She did not issue lengthy explanations or deflect. Within days, she was back in Nike content doing the work the partnership requires. The contrast in public posture has been noted by observers, one player airing frustration with the brand, the other continuing to fulfill the commercial side of the relationship without visible complaint. This is not a simple story of one athlete being elevated and another being diminished. It is a story about a major sponsor recalibrating how it allocates campaign oxygen. For decades, the default logic was relatively clear. The higher the ranking, the more prominent the campaign placement. That logic is being tested. Market reach, cultural resonance, and the ability to open new audiences are carrying more weight in the decision-making than they once did. Eala's rise has accelerated that shift because her numbers force the conversation. For Filipino fans who have watched decades of tennis broadcasts without seeing their country meaningfully represented in global campaigns, the old royal dress launch landed as something larger than product. It was a visible signal that the commercial side of the sport had registered their presence. Not a ceremonial gesture, a campaign lead. Eala is still early in the process of turning breakthrough results into sustained presence at the very top. The Cincinnati loss was a reminder that the climb remains difficult. Sabalenka remains the player to beat on most weeks. Both things can be true at the same time. What Nike's choices suggest is that the old automatic link between ranking and marketing primacy is no longer absolute. The market is speaking in engagement metrics and geographic reach. The brand has started listening. The question worth sitting with is practical. If you were responsible for Nike's tennis marketing heading into the US Open, would you lead the campaign imagery with the world #1 currently expressing public frustration, or with the 21-year-old whose audiences consistently over-index in the regions the brand has identified for growth? There is no single correct answer. There is only the data each side chooses to prioritize. The kits will be on court soon enough. The crowds will react. The commercial numbers will follow later. For now, the signal has already been sent. Stateside tennis, where the ones who read the campaign imagery stay until the market renders its verdict.